Y nada más, finalmente quisiera añadir que Edina Becirevic é a presidenta da organización non gubernamental Atlantic Initiative, que é a Iniciativa do Atlántico, que é unha das máis activas no país. E sen máis, entón, quisiera pasarle a palabra a Edina para que nos conte todo. Esquecime de decir que ten publicado un libro que se chama Xenocidio no río Drina, publicado en 2009, que vai sair en versión inglesa moi pronto, entre outros dous libros máis e moitas publicacións. Agora, sin máis, para aí.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, and I am really honored and touched to be here. I want to especially thank to the University of Coruña and to the Mayor House of Coruña for sponsoring this event. I also want to thank the Agora Center for hosting RÁFAGAS as well. And also I feel I should take this opportunity to special individual thank to Merce Carvalho and Maria Mar Rodriguez Romero for inviting me. Today, I mean, Catherine has introduced already more or less key points of my talk today. And as she already said, I was a journalist when the war started in Bosnia, kind of recently graduated journalist. And in 1992, when war began in Bosnia and Herzegovina, when the first shells started to fall on my city, the international community stood aside and watched as Serbia started the aggression against the country's non-Serb population. We were really shocked that the governments worldwide ignored concentration camps, mass rape and murder, the destruction of cultural monuments, sieges of cities, and the intentional starvation of civilians. We were shocked that the governments worldwide pretended they did not see genocide. Instead, they choose to call it a civil war, and they refer to the action of Serb armed forces by the euphemistic term ethnic cleansing. Nowadays, by watching what's going on in Palestine or Syria, we're always faced with some newly made definitions to identify what's going on, so that that would justify the inaction of the international community. I believe you do know about Bosnia and Herzegovina and some basic facts about the former Yugoslavia, but I'll just kind of mention it in reference to my personal experience. Before the war started, I believe that we Bosnians lived in the only of the 6 Yugoslav republics that maintained a truly multicultural ethics. And that's the world where I lived in. I really grew up not knowing exactly to differentiate based on names among my friends. I really grew up in an atmosphere where I didn't know whether my friends were Bosnian Muslims, Bosnian Serbs, or Bosnian Croats. For me, they were all Sarajevans. And we were all constituent people with equal rights. But I think that painful memories of the Nazi invasion during World War II, when Bosnia, like other Yugoslav territories, was caught up in a parallel civil war, were covered over with politically motivated silence, because Tito, the communist leader in Yugoslavia, he promoted the so-called ethics, brotherhood, and unity. And we never really understood what was going on during the Second World War. There was no proper reconciliation process. And many authors nowadays say that one of the reasons that in 1990s Yugoslavia went through such a horrible experience is because we did not face up what was going on during the World War II. I mean, growing up in Tito's, under Tito's regime, many young people in Bosnia, and especially in urban areas, were ignorant of how deeply wounds of World War II were still felt. So Milosevic propaganda that started towards the end of the 80s had such a huge impact on the Serbian population. And many serious analysts did warn that after the aggression against Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina would be the next conquest of Serbia and the Yugoslav People's Army. And these armed aggressions were not really possible without the support of Serbs inside Croatia and the Serb population inside Bosnia. In retrospect, it's easy to see that war was the most likely development. Still, many in Bosnia, and I was one of them, naively believed that our multinational tolerance would remain intact, that Bosnian Serbs would not fall prey to Milosevic's warmongering. The truth is that some of my Bosnian Serb friends accepted this nationalist ideology and left Sarajevo. But the truth is that also many of my Bosnian Serb friends and many of the Sarajevan Serbs stayed in the city and refused to identify with something what was called exclusively Serbian vision. They also suffered the food and water shortages and daily exposure to Serbian shells and snipers. And some of them were killed and injured, together with 11,541 Sarajevan in 3.5 years under siege. Bosnia and Herzegovina applied for independence, and it was in a similar position to Macedonia. We kind of knew what's going to happen after we apply for independence. We had a heavy concentration of the JNA on our territory, and there was little hope that the international community would intervene if the Yugoslav People's Army attacked. So our political leadership could hardly develop a viable political strategy or military resistance plan. Many, when they talk about the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they say that it was a civil war, that it wasn't a genocide. And many, there is a significant numbers of authors that you as a student would come across when you study war in Bosnia. They say it's an ethnic cleansing, everybody participated, there is no good guys or bad guys. But my research and my argument is that that is the false picture. That is the picture that international community choose to stand by simply to justify its inaction. The program of activities and the measures were designed by the Serbian leadership within the wider context of a war plan known simply as the frame. And if you look up at the Hague Tribunal, database and some documents that appeared after the war, it is obvious that the plan to exterminate all those that did not agree with exclusively Serbia and Bosnia existed. that plan was called RAM, RAM, or the frame. And there is plenty of evidence that the war was planned and that it wasn't simply a spontaneous war. When the war started, from Sarajevo to us, it seems that the world was divided in two. To us, it seems that there was this world of dominant Western politics, which showed respect for Serbian military power, and the world of civil society, along with a handful of brave international journalists, people like Roy Gatman, Samantha Power, Ed Uljami, Christiana Nampur, and many others, who saw genocide in Bosnia for what it was. And then in 1993, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia was established. And it led to a hope that justice could prevail and that international criminal law, by punishing individual perpetrators, could make up for mistakes of international politics. At about the same time, encouraged by the establishment of the ICTY, the Bosnian government also brought charges against Serbia and Montenegro in the International Court of Justice, invoking the Genocide Convention in a state versus state lawsuit for the first time. In The Hague, I believe you know, but I will just repeat, there are 3 courts dealing with war crimes. There is ad hoc war crimes tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, which is set up to punish individual perpetrators. It's set up for individual responsibility, and its jurisdiction is limited only for the former Yugoslavia. There is another court also set up for individual responsibility. It's called just International Criminal Court, and the idea is that that court once become a worldwide, global, no limits court. For now, the government of the United States, Israel, and some other governments, they do not recognize this court because they don't want their soldiers or politicians to be eventually tried at that court. And there is the third court. It's shortly called Palate of Justice, and that court is set up for disputes between the states, state versus state. And that is the court that the Bosnian government also in 1993 used to sue Serbia for genocide. That is the first time that the Genocide Convention was invoked it was the first time that the Genocide Convention was invoked and applied in a state versus state lawsuit. But nothing happened, really. Even with the establishment of the ad hoc International Criminal Tribunal for the individual responsibility and with this state versus state lawsuit for genocide, Bosnia versus Serbia, nothing happened. In the meantime, those who were committing genocide in Bosnia, they simply continued to color rivers red with blood of innocent non-Serb victims. And those victims, thanks to an arms embargo imposed by the UN Security Council, were denied the right to defend themselves. I want to explain this point. Bosnia and Herzegovina was attacked by Serbia, its eastern neighbor, and later on, on the western side, the aggression was joined by Croatia. The idea was that they divide Bosnia and Herzegovina between Serbia and Croatia, and that is what the Serbian President Milosevic and Tudjman agreed back on in 1991. The arms embargo was effectively applied, the UN arms embargo was effectively applied for the whole territory of the former Yugoslavia, but it only had effect on Bosnia or on Bosnian Muslims who didn't have the army and other Bosnian citizens who did not want to join Bosnian Croat or Bosnian Serb armies who inside acted as collaborationist forces, joining Serbia and Croatia in the division of its country. So not only that the Bosnian citizens were denied food by being encircled, they were also denied right to defend themselves. In 3.5 years of war in Bosnia, Serbian and Bosnian Serb forces killed around 150,000 non-Serb civilians and raped around 50,000 women in a systematic campaign. But in July of 1995, they stepped up the intensity of the killing, and after conquering the UN safe area of Srebrenica, they killed 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys in just a couple of days. The scale of Srebrenica massacre, just simple intensity of the killing, the fact they killed 8,000 people in just a couple of days, forced the international community to finally undertake the military action. And that military action did stop the war. A bombing campaign was followed by peace talks that resulted in the Dayton Peace Agreement. And the construction of this Dayton Peace Agreement failed all principles of justice because the perpetrators of genocide were rewarded for their crime, given half of the territory, and they really were allowed to transform the invented Serb Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina into an entity now known as Republika Srpska, which exists within the borders of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's only that towards the end of 1995, after NATO intervention, genocide finally crossed the threshold of international political, journalistic, and academic discourse. Yet, it is politically correct now that only genocide in Srebrenica has so-called title of genocide. All other crimes that happened prior to that, and I remind you around 140,000 people were killed before Srebrenica, international politicians, majority of journalists, many academics, they simply do not want to call that genocide. Like many Bosnians, I had lots of unanswered questions during the war. I mean, I was 25. My life suddenly turned into the nightmare. I kept on wondering, like, why did it happen to us? Why some of my Serb friends joined to the other side to join a genocide. And as the first bombs fell and the first of my friends left to join up with nationalistic fanatics in the hills, I also obsessively questioned my childhood memories, trying to find among them the warning signs I'd missed, some signs that would tell me why is this happening to my country in the spring of 1995. But I couldn't find evidence in my childhood. Actually, majority of my friends prior to the war were Bosnian Serbs. And my pain was accompanied with misunderstanding that it really made it even greater. I believe in liberal and multicultural values, and I could not believe that Milosevic's propaganda will be so powerful that this artificial creation of the fear of others will have such a powerful effect on friends and neighbors of different nationalities. And now I would like to show you a small video. I'm not even sure, will I be able, will I know how to do this? Yeah, this video. Okay, here, yeah. This is some of those because I told you I worked as a journalist during the war. I worked for WTN, which was then British-American television agency, and quite a number of those images, because I worked as a journalist, TV producer. I was there when it was happening. So when I say that my life turned into a nightmare, I just want you to see what the nightmare was like. It's covered by the music from Seal, so it's kind of milder, so you'll miss the terrible sounds that usually accompany these kind of images. Yes.